We define ourselves through our history, culture, and food, but we so rarely think to stop and ask, how does it all work? Revealed examines the hows and whys while pulling the curtain back on the things you never thought to ask. On this episode, unparalleled elegance and grandeur, high-end luxury, an icon that defined New York and the world. From the turn of the century to now, the Waldorf Astoria Hotel.
There is a saying that there is no New York without Waldorf Astoria.
The Waldorf Astoria is a hotel in a class of its own.
Throughout its history, the Waldorf has shown generations of New Yorkers and Americans and visitors from around the world the meaning of hospitality.
Always an innovator, superior when it comes to the world of service.
First hotel rooms to have indoor plumbing and electricity. First hotel rooms to have in-room dining.
Host to presidents and premiers, dignitaries and diplomats, actors and A-listers.
The importance that it has to New York's place in the world.
If these walls could talk, the secrets that would be told.
Every New Yorker has a Waldorf story.
There is so much love for this hotel. Waldorf is about keeping the experience very elegant, but most importantly, very sincere. Are you enjoying this beautiful hotel?
Yes.
You know, we really believe on really extending the service with the heart. And I think that's what gives really personality to the hotel.
There is no hotel quite like the Waldorf Astoria.
The Waldorf Astoria has contributed to such a high degree to the life of the city and the life of the country.
301 Park Avenue, an iconic address in the heart of New York City.
So this building is both an individual New York City landmark, which covers the exterior, and an interior New York City landmark, which covers a series of interior spaces. So it is the highest degree of protection that New York can afford a building. It's the fourth largest interior landmark.
From the moment you walk inside, immediately you're surrounded by these astounding spaces.
They're arranged in line, one after another. Architects call it enfilade. And when you stand at one end, you can look all the way down to the other avenue. So as you move from one to another, they perfectly expand and contract in a perfectly alternating rhythm. And this was intended to create a sense of drama.
And that's when the magic really starts.
For more than a century, the Waldorf Astoria has reigned as the pinnacle of luxury. Born in the Gilded Age, when New York's high society fought fiercely for status, it was a hotel built to dazzle the world.
The original Hotel Waldorf was built on the site of the Astor Mansion of William Waldorf Astor. William Waldorf Astor was the great-grandson of John Jacob Astor. William Waldorf Astor was the richest person in the world. Initially, the money came from the fur trade. Later, it came through real estate.
William Waldorf wanted a place of elegance to cater to wealthy diplomats. After his father died, he decided to build a hotel right at the site of his family home on 33rd and 5th Avenue. This caused friction between William Waldorf and his aunt, Caroline Schermerhorn Astor, known as Lena, the grand dame of society who lived next door.
Caroline Schermerhorn Astor, who was known as the Mrs. Astor. And that's a whole other side of the family. She had a son, John Jacob Astor IV. Relations between the two cousins, William Waldorf Astor and John Jacob Astor, were never very close.
Actually, the family drama started between William Waldorf and his aunt when Lena began calling herself the Mrs. Astor. By assuming this revered position in the family, she hoped to secure her place atop society. But as the most senior Astor male, William Waldorf felt his wife should be called the Mrs. Astor. Building a hotel next to the most important society address was Waldorf's retribution. In a year, the hotel rose under the guise of architect Henry Hardenberg, already known for his masterpiece, the Dakota, an opulent fortress of luxury on Central Park West. Costing $4 million, or nearly $140 million in today's money, a chateau-esque hotel went up and was named the Waldorf Hotel for the Astor ancestral homestead in Germany.
And there was something quite delightful about it. So there were lots of little turrets and gables.
William Waldorf hired George Bolt, the famous hotelier, as manager.
In its early days, George Bolt conceived of the hotel as a haven for the well-to-do. That was his phrase. And his attitude was to really pad on the luxury. The curious thing about the hotel was that it had 13 floors, which was not common at the time. You know, so many people were superstitious. He always felt that 13 was a lucky number for him.
The hotel had 600 rooms and stood 225 feet high. The furnishings were antiques purchased by the Bolts during a visit to Europe.
It wasn't so unusual at the time to essentially go shopping in Europe for distinct elements of architectural interiors.
The construction bothered not only Lena, but all her society friends.
No doubt, this very loud construction project right next to the house of Mrs. Astor caused her a lot of annoyance.
But George Bolt outsmarted his critics by having society, especially the nouveau riche, like William and Alva Vanderbilt, come to him on opening day in March 1893.
He came up with the idea of making opening night a benefit for what was at the time the pet charity of New York's most fashionable set. And that was a children's hospital called St. Mary's. Mrs. Vanderbilt was going to have Walter Damrosch, the famous conductor, conduct the orchestra at her house. And she canceled the party she was going to give and moved everything to the Waldorf.
The Waldorf was an immediate success, and by the end of the first year, the hotel had earned back the cost of construction. John Jacob Astor IV, cousin of William, saw that new money society, like the Vanderbilts, were migrating uptown, north on Fifth Avenue. He used that pressure to convince his mother to relocate away from the hotel. But what would become of the property right next door to the Waldorf? Clearly, John Jacob Astor IV had plans.
George Bolt had been very concerned about what would go next door. You know, he had built up the Hotel Waldorf as this temple to the elite.
John Jacob Astor IV built his own hotel right on the site of his mother Lena's estate. Using the same architect, the Astoria was built in 4 years, opening in 1897. At 270 feet, 45 taller than the Waldorf, the hotel flaunted 25 public rooms and 550 guest suites, built to outshine its neighbor, his cousin, at every turn.
Initially, it seems as if the idea was that the two hotels would run independently.
But then eventually they found out that by unifying together, they would be more successful.
Feud or not, one thing the Astors knew well, money begets money. The cousins joined the corridor between the hotels and called it the Waldorf-Astoria. Patrons referred to it as simply the hyphen.
You entered the Palm Garden, and that was a dome of tessellated glass, so the effect would have been magical. It was one of New York's top places for elegant lunch. The Waldorf became one of the few places where it became acceptable for members of high society to entertain. It very much established itself as a competitor to Delmonico's.
Delmonico's showcased European chefs, an a la carte menu, and private dining rooms. But the Waldorf offered more. Walking in was a step into ultra luxury.
People would come and strut their best clothes.
Society flocked there. It was the place to see and be seen. The papers commented on the promenade of the elites parading their finest wardrobe.
The best dressed people, and that's why they coined the name Peacock.
The papers called the corridor Peacock Alley. The Waldorf Astoria became known for its lavish style.
Very early in the Waldorf's history, it became known as a place for dignitaries, politicians. The Premier of China came, and the Duke of Veragua, reputedly he was a descendant of Christopher Columbus.
In 1900, Nikola Tesla racked up a $20,000 bill while living at the Waldorf Astoria. He eventually would pay back his debt many years later by mortgaging his invention, the Wardenclyffe Tower. Tragically, John Jacob Astor IV would die when the Titanic sank on April 15, 1912.
By the 1920s, it became clear that the old Waldorf's days were numbered. The neighborhood that surrounded it had declined in terms of popularity.
The Astor family sold the site of the hotel on May 3, 1929, to developers who would build the iconic skyscraper, the Empire State Building, on the exact piece of property that was the original home of the Waldorf Astoria.
The manager at the time of the old Waldorf, a fellow named Lucius Boomer, he's the one who shepherded its move to Park Avenue.
The Astors were looking for a new home, and turns out the Vanderbilts were looking for new tenants to take over the land of a power plant on a full city block near Grand Central Terminal on Park Avenue. The Waldorf Astoria Corporation started construction in the height of the Depression. Construction was a challenge because the hotel would be built over the functioning railroad below. Steel columns would be embedded next to the tracks, while the trains kept to their schedule, never skipping a beat.
Schultz and Weaver, the leading hotel architects of their day, built in what we now call an Art Deco style.
The Waldorf Astoria opened on October 1st, 1931. It was the tallest and largest hotel in the world at the time, on Park Avenue between 49th and 50th Streets. But it opened at a time when the country was rapidly sinking in one of the largest economic depressions ever known. The elegant luxury of the Waldorf Astoria on Park Avenue. We opened in 1931 at the height of the Depression. It was a huge gamble, only turning a profit after 8 years. But the true success for the hotel would come later.
The big turning point in the history of the Waldorf Astoria came in 1946, when the new United Nations was established in New York. The UN needed a place for all of the delegates. So very early on, the Waldorf agreed to accept all delegates, and in turn, it would become the preferred hotel for all UN events.
The hotel itself is like a royal palace, if you will. It's very structured to welcome a lot of the dignitaries, a lot of the presidents, a lot of the government officials.
You can draw a line of connection between virtually every notable figure of the 20th century and the Waldorf Astoria. They all either stayed here, made a speech here, attended a dinner, and contributed to the life of the city and the country.
Every president since 1931 has stayed here at Waldorf Astoria, can you imagine?
Herbert Hoover through Barack Obama has made a stop at the Waldorf. Queen Elizabeth II's first tour to the U.S. in 1957 included a luncheon reception in the Waldorf Astoria's Grand Ballroom.
The ballroom was always one of the few spaces in New York that could accommodate large numbers of people.
All politicians knew a statement made at the Waldorf Astoria would be a media event.
Martin Luther King speaking to an admiring audience, and President Johnson defending the Civil Rights Act, the NAACP holding its dinners here.
And it was the locale for a celebrity holding court.
We start getting all the Hollywood coming here, and we have Frank Sinatra that stay with us, Marilyn Monroe that stay with us, Cole Porter. Kennedy doing speeches, every president has stayed in this hotel. Such an incredible history. Even the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame,
But after 86 years of hosting thousands of events and guests, the hotel was in dire need of modernization. The Waldorf Astoria closed in 2017 to undergo an ambitious transformation. After a $2 billion renovation by the famed design firm Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, the hotel recently opened. Meticulous research by principal architect and commissioner at the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission, Frank Mahan, and his team brought the Waldorf Astoria back to its original glory.
This building is a 1.6 million square foot full block building, and we have completely transformed it. Before the building closed, it had 1,400 hotel rooms, and now it has 375 hotel rooms. And it has all of the public spaces, event spaces, lobbies, lounges that people will remember, but they have been completely transformed, both from an aesthetic and preservation standpoint, but also in the way that they function.
Each space has its own architectural character, but taken as a whole, the spaces also work as an ensemble.
So when you enter at Park Avenue, you can now see natural light. It's subtle, but I think it's really going to affect the way that people move through the space. They're going to be drawn towards natural light. So I think it draws you deeper into the building.
You are met with this beautiful mosaic, from Louis Regal. This is a 1931 piece, and it depicts a man that goes through all the life episodes.
The Wheel of Life mosaic, created out of 148,000 tiles and once hidden under carpeting, has been meticulously restored. The lobby leads right into Peacock Alley.
Peacock Alley is located literally at the center of this building, and the clock is dead center in that space. And it was always intended to be this gathering space, this lounge, this living room.
Oh, my favorite part of the hotel. Being raised in Italy and looking at people in piazzas go by, I have to go with the Peacock Alley just because you can literally sit over there and just enjoy a drink, an aperitivo, and listen to beautiful music. We even have a phrase that says, let's meet at the clock or meet me at the clock. This is arguably as famous as Waldorf Astoria, and now it's been fully restored, and it kind of reminds us how timeless this hotel really truly is. It was actually donated by Queen Victoria to the US as a gift.
John Jacob Astor purchased the clock after seeing it displayed at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. Although it is unknown how much Astor paid, it is estimated to be worth $1 million. 11 feet tall and weighing nearly 2 tons, the clock was carved from American walnut, embellished with silver-plated reliefs and golden figurines.
We're going to have a chime at 5 p.m. every night to distinguish the end of a business day and the beginning of a social day. This is the famous piano, pride and joy of Cole Porter. I've lived at the Waldorf almost 30 years.
Cole Porter, the composer and singer, lived at the hotel from 1934 to 1964, where he penned a few of his classics such as Anything Goes, I Get a Kick Out of You, and I've Got You Under My Skin. Porter nicknamed his Steinway High Society. When he died, he bequeathed the piano to the hotel.
And we cherish this because it really creates that type of personality to the overall Picacalli.
This being a restoration, preservation, and adaptive reuse project, we've really stayed true to the original design aesthetic. So the ballroom will be brighter, it'll be more luminous. We have acoustically isolated the ballroom from the rest of the building.
The Grand Ballroom, to me, it is one of the hearts, really, of Waldorf Astoria, just because so much is happening to the ballroom.
A prize room in the renovated Waldorf is the Basildon Room. The 18th century dining room was transported from the Basildon Park Manor in England and was installed in 1931.
Everyone remembered this room as being essentially brown in Waldorf Astoria's own archives. And we found a description that led us to do some forensics on site. Our conservation architect partners, building conservation associates, they can remove individual layers of paint and then expose the polychromatic original colors and use that as a roadmap for reimagining this space.
From its earliest days, the Waldorf Astoria has been a culinary innovator. One of the reasons? Oscar Shirky. Simply known as Oscar of the Waldorf, Oscar was the manager at the hotel for its 50 years, from 1893 to 1943. He was as much of a celebrity as the people he attended to. Shirky published a cookbook of some of the Waldorf favorites that live on today.
Oscar is my muse. He must have been the most creative. He was really the social master, if you will. They would plan all the big galas and create all these recipes. So in a way, he was the stylist behind the Waldorf.
In a kitchen, necessity can be the mother of invention. And voila, the Waldorf salad was born when Oscar needed a plate for the well-heeled at a luncheon. It is a few simple ingredients: apples, celery, walnuts, and mayonnaise.
We wanted to look to the past to think about to the future. So we have the apples, the celery, the grapes are all bound with a really garlicky mayonnaise. And then everything else gets a very creamy lemony dressing. So it's the effect of the mayonnaise, but not quite mayonnaise. So it brings everything up. It lightens everything a lot more.
The hotel had a number of signature items.
Thousand Island dressing was invented here, as was Eggs Benedict, made very popular here.
The story goes that in 1942, stockbroker Lemuel Benedict was struggling with a hangover. His cure? Eggs, crispy bacon, and hollandaise on the side. Oscar whipped up the dish with an English muffin. Chef Oscar later substituted Canadian bacon, and it became a menu staple. But it was the cocktail menu that stole the attention of the patrons.
We mixed the most incredible drinks, starting from a classic Rob Roy, that it was actually one of the drinks that was coined here in back in the days.
The Rob Roy was conceived at the Waldorf for a local operetta, and is a variation of the Manhattan using Scotch whiskey. But the cocktail has been modernized for today.
We have 4 different ingredients. We're gonna start with some Angostura bitters. Then we're gonna do some Dom Benedictine, which is a honey herbal liqueur. Then it's an Italian sweet vermouth. And then in this case, we're making it with a reserved Japanese whiskey. We also are presenting it with some ginger smoke, just to enhance the whole experience of the cocktail.
A classic, but ever-changing with the times, the hotel is a master of reinvention.
The Waldorf Astoria has contributed to such a high degree to the life of the city and the life of the country, and a prominent place on the international stage.
The only intention behind the Waldorf Astoria New York is to have the community fall in love with the hotel, with the spirit of hospitality that New York always had. And actually there is a saying that there is no New York without Waldorf Astoria.